Welcome back. Today we are talking about unleashing the power within, transforming setbacks into stepping stones. Life is filled with ups and downs. While we celebrate our wins, setbacks can feel overwhelming. Yet, the real opportunity for growth lies in learning to turn these setbacks into valuable lessons. This process can push us towards greater success and fulfillment. Let's understand the setbacks. What are setbacks? Setbacks are unexpected events or circumstances that slow down our progress or momentarily derail our plans. They can take many forms, such as personal failures, job losses, financial troubles, or health issues. In fact, it's proven that most adults will encounter a major life setback that challenges their coping skills. Acknowledging this reality helps us to understand that setbacks are a normal part of life. Now, what are the emotional impacts of these setbacks? Setbacks can bring up a range of feelings, including frustration, disappointment, and sadness. Understanding these emotions is crucial. Let's talk about the emotional impact of these setbacks. Setbacks can bring up a range of feelings, including frustration, disappointment, and sadness. Understanding these emotions is crucial. For instance, a study published in the Journal of Happiness Studies found that expressing emotion can enhance one's resilience. Recognizing and validating our feelings allows us to process setbacks and move forward effectively. And let's talk about overcoming those setbacks. We recently talked to Tyson and Missy on the phone to get their experience. Let's hear how they handle these things. Tyson?
Tell me about one of the most challenging setbacks you have had.
So one of the most challenging setbacks,
And if there's multiple, you can kind of tell kind of where you want to.
yeah,
Tell kind of what you,
they kind of go together. Um, at the age of 20, I kind of was just having a hard time with keeping a job and whatever else. And I always wanted to serve in the military. So, February of 2005, I decided that I was going to join the military. Um, and most likely end up in Iraq. Um, so I did it anyway because that's the direction I chose at that age. And so shortly after that, I went to basic training and got out of basic training in July, and then to my duty station, Fort Campbell, Kentucky, mid July, and then quickly after that, I was in Iraq by like October. Um, we had just left after my birthday. My birthday's on September 12th, so I had just turned 21, and we were flying out of Fort Campbell like the end of September, beginning of October, and got to Kuwait and all of that. Um, so then we ended up going to Baghdad, and we ended up in a town called Yosefia, um, and Latvia, Mamadiya were like our little area. Um, and they called it the Triangle of Death. And I was there for 6 months, and it is what it is. I was in the infantry, so it was just kind of crappy living, not the worst. But a bunch of stuff happened, and I eventually got back to the main base at Yosefia. The day one, I got hit by a mortar round and have a shrapnel in my chest, like 8 pieces that are like $half size pieces.
oh
Um,
wow.
so and then one of those pieces actually went. Um, there's a pericardium around your heart, so like here's your
Mm-hmm.
and it actually went through that and bruised my heart. So I was like millimeters away from dying. I had surgery in Baghdad. Had to ride in a 113, which is like a tracked military like tank kind of thing, but it's more like a personnel carrier. Rode in that for a long time. Finally got to the hospital. Had the X-rays, everything. There's actually a news article in my local news from when I called my mom from the hospital, and the nurse kind of egged me on because I was like, no, I don't need to call my mom. And she's like, this might be the last time you ever talk to your mom. So I called my mom and told her that everything was going to be fine, and didn't tell her how serious it was. But yeah, that's so dealt with that. After my surgery went well, obviously. So I got hurt March of 06, and surgery went well. I ended up going through Longstool, Germany, back to Walter Reed, um, and got a month off of work and came home for a while, for a month. Went back to Walter Reed. They asked me if I wanted another month off. I told them no, I needed to get back to my duty station because we were having kids that were like 18, 19 years old showing up in Iraq. And I'm like, these kids have no idea what's going on. The rear D wasn't really explaining anything to them. So I was like, no, I want to get back and start helping prep these guys that are going over there. And that was a really bad mistake. So I got treated like shit while I was on rear D. And I started drinking a lot. I drank a lot before I even got like into the Army. In hindsight, I realized that was like my alcoholic tendencies that I didn't know anything about. So that'll come into play later on in the story. So I dealt with that. And so I was out partying all the time and drinking. I didn't care about formations because I didn't care. It was rear D. Nothing was really going on. So I was just going to my doctor's appointments, trying to get back into health so I could go back overseas. But I had a really hard time wearing the vest because it was like sitting right on my heart. So I have like, it looks like I have open heart surgery. I have a scar right down the middle of my chest. So it was really hard for me to wear that vest and be able to pass the physical tests I needed to go back. So eventually they all come back. My unit's done over there. They come back and I'm pretty decent friends with like the sergeant major and lieutenant colonel. And they asked me how things were, and I told them, I've been just drinking a lot. I haven't been caring about formation because I'm basically going to get out because I can't pass my tests. And they said, well, if that's what the case, then let's get you taken care of and get you out. And so they finally like really pushed forward to get me my med board out. So when I got med boarded out, I had already received some settlement from my injuries. And then they also already had me on my VA, I guess you would just call it insurance. So I had my VA rating. I've been getting paid every month since I got out in November of 07. I've been getting paid ever since December of 07, every month, all the way up to now, with a cost of living increase every year. So I've been getting taken care of really well from them, so I can't really complain about that. They really cared about my mental health, asking me about all that stuff as well. I actually had to tell them, like, okay, I need you to back off because now we're talking about my mental health too much, and that's causing me to have problems. So I kind of just was living off my VA money, living with my brother, kind of just working from job to job, kept losing jobs. I spent a lot of times at the bars. Eventually I just kind of gave up on working, was just living at my brother's house and drinking all the time. So I was drinking and driving a lot, and luckily I never got caught doing anything stupid or killing anybody. But September, right after my birthday in September of 2012, I rolled my brother's Suburban 7 times down a mountainside and fractured my neck, my C3. And I'm lucky that it popped forward, so I've got a bone that goes into my neck. If it would have popped backwards, they told me I probably would be paralyzed from my neck down. So kind of lucky there. But I did get a DUI while I was laying in bed the next day. It took them like 3 or 4 hours to get me out of where I was at. But the next morning they gave me a DUI, ended up going to court. And this is where my life kind of takes a turn for the better. So I was out of money. I was just kind of doing whatever. So now I'm in a neck brace. I'm on oxygen. I'm in at home, and the court tells me I have to go to AA meetings. And I'm kind of reluctant because I don't know. Like when you first hear about AA, you're just like, okay, well, that's for alcoholics and losers. And so I was like,
Right.
I'm stubborn because I'm like, that's not who I am. Like, I'm not an alcoholic. I'm just a I was using like my military time and my injury as like a crutch. Like I'm just somebody that's trying to take care of themselves after getting hurt in Iraq, basically.
And you're kind of not wanting to feel like you're being labeled on the same hand as well.
Yeah, exactly. I don't want to be a um, an army infantry soldier that is got PTSD and an alcoholic and like just like all this stuff that's all tagged onto my name. Um, but since it's court ordered, I have to go, and I'm on probation at the time, so they're checking on things, and I have to like bring like a signed sheet that says I was going. So I'm going to AA, and I would say like day one, um, there was some stuff said in that room that kind of made sense to me, and so I just kind of I had to keep going to AA for like basically a full year. Um, but eventually I went from me going, well, I have to go, to like I want to go. Um, there were some other guys in there that were in the military. A lot of the stories sounded like my story. You know, started drinking at a young age, and when you drank, you felt 10 feet tall and bulletproof, and you could get the girlfriends and be confident. And without the alcohol, I thought I couldn't be that without my alcohol. So, trying to like learn who I was without alcohol was a totally different experience. Um, so, I get sober and I go for the full year and get off probation. And right before I get off probation, the person I was with, we actually lost our kid. We lost the baby like 3 months before my year probation was over. And her and I started fighting and broke up. And then I had a new girlfriend, and her and I were kind of like trying to get back together. So the 1 year anniversary comes up on my probation, and I'm done. And they release me. And that night, her and I were supposed to meet up at the bowling alley and hang out. And I decided that I was going to relapse and start drinking again. So I did, and spent like a year and a couple of months back out drinking. Except it was more excessive. And then I also got into snow, and by the time life got really bad. Like I was basically almost homeless. I'm calling the VA centers trying to get into like in home, like inpatient um, therapies and whatever else I could do, and nothing's working. Nobody will accept me. My rent's due, and I don't have the money to pay it. And I made a phone call to a guy that was in the rooms that I really looked up to, and he asked me one question, and he was like, "Well, when's the last time you were in a room?" And I said, since I started again, since I relapsed. And he's like, "Well, just go walk through the door, and things will be fine." And I listened to him, and he was right. I got back to work, got sober again. I actually did the 12 steps. And I'm not saying this is the only way to get to free yourself from alcohol. I'm saying it's what worked for me. There's lots of different programs, so go find what works for you. I'm saying that this worked for me because I was open-minded about it, and it worked. And
It's
that's
just
that.
kind of like there's no like one size fits all. Everybody is their own unique self, and everybody kind of has to do things
Right.
differently, or like the steps might be the same, but
Right.
the way to get to the steps are different.
Right. I mean, step one is you got to admit you're powerless. I don't think that matters in which way you go. Is you got to realize you're powerless over the alcohol, because the alcohol basically just keeps consuming you. Um, and then the other part of that is you've got to do it for yourself and not for your kids or anybody else. Because if you try to put a label on it, if you fail, it's going to be their fault. So you want it to be on you, and and you have to build yourself back up. You're not there to do it for your kids. You're not there to do it for your wife. You're there to make it for you. But with that alone, I don't want to talk too much about program or whatever, but I went through 12 steps, and I felt really good about life. And me and the person that broke up got back together, and I had a good job, and so like my life has always had like these ups and downs. It's like so now I look back at my injury, and my injury in Iraq and my accident in 2012, and I can look back at those things and say, yeah, those things were bad things, but they've turned me into the man that I am now. I wouldn't be here if those things didn't happen to me. I wouldn't be as patient as I am now. I wouldn't have gone through AA and learned who I really am, because I didn't know who I was without alcohol for a long time. So now I've found this person that I can look in the mirror and see myself and be proud of who I am. I can say that I'm raising 2 girls and doing a really good job at that, and being a really good dad, which all those things I would have never been able to do without being in Iraq or without breaking my neck. And looking at those events like they're positives in my life instead of negatives, which a lot of people look at me and they're like, how can those things be positive? And it's gotten me to where I am now, and I look at myself like a pretty good, decent human being, and that's not always easy to do. It's when you're coming out of drinking, it's hard to look in a mirror. For a long time I had nightmares about Iraq, and it took a lot of time and work to get through a lot of that stuff. I dealt with PTSD. I didn't like to be around crowds, so that was one of the reasons I drank. Well, after I got sober, I was like, I want to be able to go be in those crowds, and I don't want to be freaking out. So I went to events, and I would, for the first few times, I would stand into a corner, and that way people couldn't walk around behind me, and eventually I would get more comfortable. And in the town I've lived in this town for 30 years, so I know a lot of people. So that kind of helped as well. But I pushed myself to go to these events and try to teach myself it's okay to be there, and nothing bad's going to happen because somebody walks behind me. So, because I didn't want to be trapped. Like a lot of the other stories I hear from guys that deal with PTSD and anxiety and all that is they can't be in large crowds because it just scares them. And so I forced myself to go relearn, like to retrain my brain. Like it's okay that I'm around all these people. It's okay that, I might not know all of them, but I can be comforted by just, all the other people that I do know in the area. And so that worked for that part of my life that was really hard. And that's just kind of been my life, is it's like something always comes up and I always have to adapt and overcome. Like I use that a lot in my life. I'm always telling people, well, you just have to adapt and overcome. And, the other part of it for me is when I was an alcoholic, well, I'm always going to be an alcoholic, but now I'm in recovery. But when I was actively drinking, I never put myself in anybody else's shoes. It was always blame somebody else for what happened, what's going on with me. And I always would just make everybody else feel like shit just so I could keep doing what I was doing when I was drinking. But now I work really hard and I strive for always putting myself in somebody else's shoes. Like that's always in the back of my head. Like, well, if I was in that person's shoes, how would they feel if I did that, or if they did that to me or whatever. So I always try to use that as like my stepping stones to keep being good and keeping my side of the street clean, because it's really not a simple thing to do on a daily basis to think about everybody else's feelings and all of that. So I try to just at night try to take a moment to think about my day, make sure that I didn't say anything or do anything wrong, because that stuff can kind of mess with me. because when you're first when you're first going to like recovery from alcohol, you have like a squirrel in your head that's just telling you did all these things that were so bad, and how can you deserve to be sober, um and it's because you never cleaned the street for your side. So it's like I went and made my amends, and now I try to do my amends on a daily basis and tell people I'm sorry or I made a mistake, just so that way I don't have that on my conscience. So it's really nice not having like a bag full of crap that I carried around for so many years, and that I keep that bag pretty relatively empty now instead of dealing with all of it like in your head all the time. So that's one thing that I recommend people is like if you feel like crap and you feel like there's a bunch of stuff going on in your head, you take a moment, take a breath, meditate a little bit, ask yourself why you're feeling the feelings that you have, and if there's something you can do about it. And usually you'll get the answer that you need for multiple things. Something will pop up and be like, you did this, and it makes you feel bad. So fix that problem. Tell somebody you're sorry, or tell somebody you messed up. Um, so, but yeah, that's just kind of how my story went. Now I've been sober I just celebrated 8 years on January 7th. My oldest daughter is 7, and my youngest daughter is 4. So I'm really grateful that they didn't have to see that person that I was. I still do get angry. I still do get upset, but I'm the person now that sees those things, and I get to tell them right away, like, I'm sorry that I blew up. I had a rough day, and you guys are just pushing me a little too hard, and we'll sit down and we'll talk. And a lot of people will say, um, um, but my 7-year-old and I have been working on her feelings and talking about how we feel, how we feel. I've talked to her about being in other people's shoes, and I can already see that she understands and she's getting it. And a lot of people were telling me that I was crazy, that a 7-year-old can't figure out their emotions. And I'm like, yeah, because we don't talk about them enough.
Right.
I'm 40. I'm still figuring out my emotions. I don't want my 7-year-old to not understand what I'm going through. So I talk to her about those things. And it's making her a better kid and a better human. Um, she was struggling for a little while. And then when we had her go talk to counselors and whatever else, and that kind of helped. But I've noticed that me sitting down with her and talking to her about what I've gone through and how I keep my side of the street clean, and that's what makes me happy and what keeps me to where I can keep looking in the mirror, and looking and being happy about it. You know, it's not about them and their side of the street. It's about me and my side. Um, so it's really awesome to be able to have that side of my life be clean and be patient enough to know that I have a really rough backstory, and it wasn't really always easy. But with a lot of the work and a lot of things that I did, I've made it pretty far.
Yeah, from what you said, it does sound like you have been through a lot. You have overcame a lot. Emphasis on a lot.
Right. Well, and this isn't the first time I've done a podcast or an interview about this stuff. It's because this is what I'm here for too. So when you asked if somebody wanted to, if anybody wanted to be interviewed, I'm like, well, yeah. I'm like, this is what I've been trying to do for a while, is spread my message and spread out who I am and what I've had to do to become what I am, which is a pretty good person, I believe.
Oh yeah.
And there's a lot of people out there struggling. I have a guy in my chat that one guy, that's his name. he stopped drinking on the 7th of this year, so he's got it just a couple of days. So him and I have the same sobriety date. I don't know his whole story, but it's like I already have this connection with him, and now he's watching me tell him my story, and I hope something resonates with him. I didn't want to talk about my whole alcohol side of things, but I've done a lot of crazy stuff, and it took me a long time to forgive myself for a lot of those things.
Right.
There's sometimes that I think that I forgave myself about stuff, and it comes back, and I have to work through those things. Um, um, but yeah, so it's just every day you just have to like look and figure out like what's going on with yourself, and take a moment to realize like what emotion is going on and why is it there, so that way you have a chance to get rid of it, or in some cases keep it. Why am I so happy today? Well, maybe take a second and enjoy that happy, and be like, maybe it's just because the sun's up or the birds are chirping. Like that's one of my favorite stories, is like when you're first coming out of drinking. Um, when you are drinking and actively out there, you're like, birds suck. They wake you up in the morning, they're chirping, they're out there singing, and you just want them to go away. And as you're starting to come out of the fog after being, away from alcohol for a little while, you start to realize like, okay, I'm waking up early in the morning. I'm not hungover. The birds singing is beautiful, and it's nice to wake up to. And so you start seeing like these little subtle changes in your life, where it's like, well, that used to really piss me off, to where it's like, well, that's kind of enjoyable. Like I enjoy that. It's pretty. And then all of a sudden you'd be driving around and you're like, man, the scenery is really beautiful. How come I never noticed it before? And like you'll get like these little sense of like I call them like aha moments, that like your mind's clearing and you're becoming more you're visualizing like your life more, instead of just it always being about alcohol. So um but it does take a lot of work, and it's hard to look at yourself and go, man, that's really messed up. I really did some nasty things in my life. And be able to look at
Right.
yourself and go, you know what? I can fix it. And eventually you get to tell everyone that you're sorry, or you find a way to make it so that way you've given your amends in whatever way you possibly can, so that way that baggage goes away. And eventually your heart's like full again. You're not carrying around a lot of baggage, and you're pride. You are proud of yourself again. Your pride's back, and you become this different person. Um, and I've had to deal with it more than in one way. Being injured and feeling like I could do nothing because of my injury, or I was nothing because of my injury, um, was a big deal. But then when I started drinking and using my injury as a crutch, life was great. I was getting free alcohol from everybody, and now I don't.
It's kind of like at that time, that attention is what kind of drove things
Right.
in a way.
Yeah. And so now I'm trying to, like, I have a friend, Brooke, and she brought it up the other day in chat that, I have a purple heart. Um, and it was fine, because, and her and I have had this conversation, that you won't see me a lot of the time running around throwing my purple heart out there saying that I'm injured, because I used that in my drinking days as a crutch so people would give me more alcohol or feel sorry for me.
Mhm.
And so now I'm very humble about it. I don't just walk around passing that information out to anybody. Um, and and so it's nice to have somebody like her that's not afraid to throw it out there. Um, and I appreciate that from her, because I won't do it for myself, unless I'm in the right atmosphere, like I am tonight with you. So what was your saving grace that got you through your hardest times with it all? Well, at one point, it wasn't a saving grace, is that I wasn't capable. I wasn't capable of doing the most selfish thing a person can do. I tried a couple of times, and I could never finish, basically. Um, so that was one thing that changed my life, is that I couldn't do what I wanted to do or thought that I wanted to do. Um, so without that, I wouldn't have been here any longer. Um, so that's probably the one thing that saved me, is that I wasn't capable of doing that. Um, and that was back when I was still actively drinking. And um, like I said, without having that not happen, I would have done it. So I wouldn't have had the chance to become the person I am now. Um, I know that sounds kind of weird, like your saving grace was not doing that, but to me that's the answer. Is like, if I would have, that would have been done. So um,
So experiencing kind of everything you've been through, I guess, kind of what impact did it have on your life? I know you talked about the kind of the secondary accident, not your main one,
yeah,
um, but as far as things like that, kind of after that, you talked a little bit about just kind of a bunch of other sensitive things that I'm not gonna rename because I know they're sensitive in nature.
you know, I know that, like, for me, when I'm telling my story, I feel like people don't understand, because it's like it sounds like I'm saying things backwards, like, what was your saving grace? Well, it's because I didn't do the most selfless thing in the world.
Right.
That sounds like it's backwards, you know. Well, I'm grateful that I didn't do that, because I wouldn't be here at all. Um,
Right.
you know, um, a lot of the things that I did back in my drinking days, that I did that were really nasty things to people. I cheated on people. I did a lot of bad things. Um, Now I can look at myself and say, well, that's not who I was. That's not who I am. That was my alcoholic person. That was being just inebriated all the time. Um,
It's kind of like it caused you to kind of have this kind of persona and this mask kind of all the time with it.
yeah, like I was always acting when I was drinking. I was always acting. I didn't get to meet my real self until I got sober, and that's when I could actually like myself. Like, I didn't think I was a terrible person when I was actively drinking, but as I was going through the steps I needed to take to get to the point where I am now, um, I started to see, like, how disgusting it was, and I got to see that people's emotions mattered in those moments, um, and that the world didn't revolve around me, and I could. Um, Sometimes I could make direct amends to people, and sometimes I couldn't. So I had to come up with my own method that would work for me. Because I thought that if I did try to make amends to those people, it would harm them more than help them. Um, so I had to come up with something that would work. That would make me feel like I made amends to them, even though I didn't make it directly to them. Um, I wrote letters to a lot of people. Um, and I didn't send it to them, but I would write letters, um, and then I would burn them, or um, I would write like a nice letter saying sorry, and I would put it in a place like that reminded me of them. And if somebody read it. But I didn't put her name, I didn't put their names or anything like that, so nobody would ever know who was talking about who. But I just had to find some stuff that worked.
Right.
Um, because if I didn't, those squirrels in my head would just keep pounding at me until I wanted, tell me to go drink because I was such a bad person or something. Um, But yeah, all of that takes a lot of time, and um, the harder you work through all of those emotions of learning who you really are, um, the faster you kind of start lifting the fog up from your eyes as a active drinker, and sobering up. Those things, the harder you work at those things and trying to meditate and all of that, the faster you kind of find your true self. Um, have to pause and like think about everything, and you know, some of my interviewers in the past have asked me like, why do you stop and think for a second? It's because it's remarkable to me to know that all of these things have happened to me, and I get to turn the net like the really negative, crappy things that I did in my life into positive things.
And kind of see kind of where you were at then and look at where you're at now with things.
Yeah, you know, I know I can walk down the street and see. uh, when I walk down the street, I'm not scared of who I might walk into. I know that most people are going to look at me and smile and wave. Um, I'm not going to get people walking across the street just to avoid me like I did back in those days. Uh, so I take those moments when people like smile at me or I smile at them and they smile back, and I'm like, such a change, in my life and who I was and who I am. I've always was the same person. I just didn't get to act like this because I wasn't ready. I wasn't ready to be the person I am now. All these
Right.
things had to happen to me so I could be where I am now. And I'm really grateful for all of it. I'm grateful that I got hurt in Iraq. I'm grateful that I rolled the truck in 2012. Uh, I I wouldn't be who I am without those things. And anybody that's going through a lot of hard times needs to understand eventually you look at those bad things that you did and then you'll be the same way. You'll realize like they got me here. Look at me now. I have a great life. I'm a school bus driver. I'm a really good dad. I have two really awesome young, a 4-year-old and 7-year-old. I, you know, I try to spend time giving strength and hope from my story so other people can do better or feel better about themselves or whatever they might need from it. They can hopefully find something in my story that kind of resonates with them and can help move them forward from the next step. One of my other favorite sayings is change is hard. That's why
Hmm.
people don't do it.
Yeah, change
Changing,
is not easy.
yeah, changing who you are as a person is probably like the hardest thing you will ever do in your life. Um, I know a lot of friends that had moved away from their problems, thought that they were going to move away from their drinking problem, and it never worked because where they were located didn't matter. Wherever you go, there you are. And if it's staring you in the face and it's still you, then you need to take care of yourself. You need to figure out what you can do to better yourself or fix what else is going on that's not making you feel good. And meditation is probably the best way. There's no such thing as a perfect meditation, but if you take
Mm-mm.
just a few breaths and like I said, you ask yourself, why am I feeling this feeling? You're probably going to get an answer.
Right.
Sometimes you're going to like the answer, and sometimes you're going to hate the answer. But if you go do whatever that answer was, it's probably going to make you feel better, and you're probably going to be better off. That's like your self conscience telling you, go do this to make yourself feel better. If you listen to it, it's probably going to work. Um, I believe that we have this connection to whatever it might be, and when we meditate, that connection gets opened, and we can find the right answers. within ourselves to do the right thing. For most people, I mean, there's obviously some people that might have a mental or some kind of a disability that they can't open up that, but I think almost everybody that can meditate can find decent answers within themselves to what the best answer is to probably fix whatever emotion they are having at that time that they need to get rid of or to keep. Like I said, there's really good emotions out there, and it's really okay to like sit there and be in that moment. Like if it's a great moment, just be in that moment, meditate in that moment. You know, we don't always have to meditate over bad moments.
So it sounds kind of kind of went back and it answered. Now that I'm thinking about it, when we initially kind of talked about the setback, it kind of, hearing it again, it sounds like it had that positive impact on you later on down the road.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like all the negative things that I've done in my life, I can go back and I can say those were all things that were really negative things.
Hmm.
But I can look at those things and I can use them to be like, and that's probably why I use the put myself in somebody else's shoes a lot. It's because I'm always trying to keep myself out of the things that I used to do. Like I do not want to hurt people's feelings. I want to see how they would put themselves in that, and it gets me in trouble sometimes because it makes me assume a little bit too much. But it also keeps me in a safe place where it's like, well, I wouldn't want that to happen to me, so I
Right.
won't do it or I won't say it. Um, and sometimes I get somebody telling me like, no, you're fine. Whatever you said was going to be okay or whatever. Um, and I do apologize for things probably more than I should, but it's because I'm truly like trying to keep people's feelings in check. Like I'm trying to keep my feelings in check, so I don't feel like I have to go have a drink over something stupid like I used to do.
Hmm.
Um, I mean, back in my drinking days, I was like, oh, somebody hurt my feelings. I'm going to take a drink. That's when I went back out. After I got sober for the first time and I had my year and my probation was over, somebody hurt my feelings. And I'm like, I can drink. I'm going to drink. So, day one of being off of probation, that's how immature I was still. And I wasn't ready to be done drinking. So, I just went right back to where I was. And when I went back out, it wasn't like I started over, like a beer or two would get me drunk. No, I was back to drinking like full bottles of Crown and all these shots and all of this stuff. Like I could drink so much, and still act somewhat normal. Um, and that's exactly where I was right when I went back to drinking a year later after I got sober the first time.
Hmm.
Um, so it's really dangerous, like I've seen people that have been sober for, a year or 5 or 8, and they go back out and their brain tells them that they can drink like they did when they stopped, and it doesn't go so well for them, you know. So being a part of this sober community is not. It's not always like beautiful and wonderful. Like we do have those moments where people go back out and bad things happen to them and they're no longer with us, and those moments really suck, you know. But we're still there for the family and their friends, and try to explain to them if they ask us questions about like why, and because it's hard for people to understand that aren't alcoholics, like why. And so we spend a lot of time with the family members explaining to them like, you know, it's not their fault, and alcohol is evil. If you can drink alcohol and have 1 or 2 drinks and be done, that's great for you. I know that that's not me, and if I were to ever just to try to have one, I would be right back to where I was, 8 years ago.
So, with everything that you kind of explained and everything you've been through, Would you agree that you were able to build up resilience with things that have happened?
Like with the things that did happen or with the things that do happen?
With the things that do happen, I'm sorry.
Yeah. So like in the rooms, you'll hear people talking about like your toolbox. Um, I would say that I have a toolbox that I carry around that I keep in pretty decent shape through my meditation, through each night going back through my day and making sure that I didn't say or do something that could have upset somebody, which keeps my side of the street clean. Um, Without those tools, one little hiccup and I would probably have another drink. So I had to stay sober long enough to go through the changes I needed to gather the tools that I needed for each day, for every situation that might come up, to go, I feel comfortable in my world and in my daily life that something's not going to just pop up and make me want to have a drink. So I had to become comfortable with myself and have the confidence to be able to go do what I needed to do or whatever I wanted to do. And you kind of just build those things up as you start getting sober. You know, when I first started getting sober, I didn't go to the bars. I stayed away from, you go hang out at a barbershop for too long, you're going to get a haircut. So it's like I stopped going and hanging out at the bars. I stopped going and hanging out with all of my old friends. You're not going to have you're not going to have very many friends when you stop drinking. All the friends you thought were friends are going to disappear, and you're going to need to make new friends. So that's why I would recommend finding a group or finding a program that is with other people that you can make friends with, you can connect with, and you can find new activities to do besides the old activities that just kept leading you back into drinking. You know, I know a lot of guys that like to fish up here. Well, they stopped fishing because fishing was like, I'm going to have a drink when I'm fishing. They would take a 12 pack with them, put it in their vest.
Right.
You know, they had to,
And
they had to stop.
I
Yeah.
think that's a common deal. I don't think it's honestly, and correct me if I'm wrong. I'm not perfect by any means. I know that's a shock to you.
None of us are perfect. So it's not a shock. Even the Pope's not perfect, I promise.
Right. I mean, that's kind of fishing and drinking. They go hand in hand.
Right.
I mean, that's like barbecuing and drinking. They go hand in hand.
Right. Right. So all those things that go hand in hand with drinking, I don't recommend doing. you know. So I used to go bowling and drinking all the time. I stopped going bowling for a long time. Like I had to. I basically just constantly was working on myself. Like read my book, look at myself, try to do better, hang out with my sponsor, go to meetings, build up my tools that would allow me to live life again.
Mhm.
But until I had a decent enough box, I couldn't live life again because I was always scared of, oh, well, there might be alcohol there and I might want to take a drink. Eventually, you build up the confidence and, like you said, the resilience that it's like, no, I don't need those things because life is good. And when I had that in my life, it ruined everything. But it does take a lot of time to build up that confidence to be where you want to go. Um, and now now I'm bowling. I can go to a bar and hang out there and dance and sing and karaoke and do whatever I want and not even feel like I need to have a drink. Um, but it takes a lot of time, and some people will never can't get there. They never get that confidence back, and that's to each their own, you know. But their life,
Right.
you talk to them, and their life is way better than it was. They spend a lot of time in the rooms or in the groups that they got sober in. They go hiking with their friends, but they'll never step foot in a bar again because they're just so scared that they might drink again. And that's fine. They're happy and their lives are amazing. But you just have to make sure that you're meditating and you're talking to yourself and you're understanding what works for you and where you can and can't go maybe.
Mm-hmm.
Feel like you're finding yourself in a spot that's, oh, I feel like this isn't really good, leave like right away. Don't give yourself the chance to mess up, you know.
Right.
Um, yeah, I mean that's like one of the sayings is like get sober and you'll find out who your real friends are.
Right.
I mean, I rarely talk to any of my friends that I used to get drunk with.
When you're in that spot, is when all these individuals appear when you're doing something that they want to do. And then they want to act like they're your friend, but when things really start to happen, when you need them there,
Hmm.
they're not there. They disappear, and it kind of goes. And I've been told, it's quantity over quality. So it's not the amount of friends; it's true friends. So it's better to have one than 100, as long as that one's a really good one.
Yeah, I would agree with that. For me, um, I have a really hard time um, connecting with somebody and staying connected with them.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I don't know if that's because of what happened while I was overseas or if it's part of having like a really good connection with somebody. Like even with like my co-parent that I'm divorced from or whatever. I have a really hard time staying connected with people for a long period of time. I don't know if that's like um, a safety mechanism for me, so that way I don't keep losing people that I really care about. Um, so that's something that I do actively really work on. That's really hard for me is trying to stay in those really good relationships with people that are just good people. Um, because I'm like, well, I'm getting too attached, and what if something happens to them? So I try to. It really sucks because it's like I really do love a lot of people, but then I always find myself kind of like pushing myself away from them, um, just because I'm like, okay, they're getting too close to me, and I don't know why. Like this is like that's the one thing that I struggle with in my life is like it's okay to let people into your life, and it's okay if they leave, like not just like in the sense of them leaving to like a different state, but like if they leave this earth or whatever, and it's okay. It's going to hurt, but it's okay. But it's happened so many times that it's like my body and my mind just are like, it's enough. We don't need to have that close of a relationship with so many people where it's going to hurt over and over and over again.
Right.
Um, it's like, that's the one thing that I keep struggling with. But I'm working on it. Like I've met some really awesome people here, that I really care about. And like, I already find myself like trying to protect myself and my emotions and like don't let them get too close or you don't get close to them because all they're going to do is leave. Like I don't have any best friends left from high school. I don't have any army buddies that I'm like best friends with that I keep up with. Like I really struggle with that side of like being a good friend.
Mm-hmm.
um, it's like, okay, that was fun. We're getting too close or whatever. And it's time for me to push you away. Um, but without being sober, I would never know what that feeling was. And now today I get to look at that feeling and try to like push through it and just be like, it's okay. Like that's what life is. Life is meeting people and they're going to come and they're going to go. Doesn't matter if they just move from a different state or if they leave this earth. You have to learn how to be, I don't want to say comfortable with it, but you have to know like that's how it is. Like that's how it
Right.
works, right? Like That's the
Right.
word. Um, so like that's the one thing that really scares me still is like getting to really connected with somebody and them disappearing, and then I'm stuck by myself again. Um, so I like to be alone. Like I don't want to be. I miss the idea of being like in a relationship where I'm cuddling people or whatever other extracurricular activities you can think of. But for me, it's like I don't want something with. I think I got my point, but it's just hard to explain. Um, so like yeah, I'm still not perfect. I've gone through a lot of things. I think I'm a really good person, but there's still stuff that I deal with on a daily basis, and um, I have to keep those things in my mind and be like, okay, well, what am I going to do to try to make that better? Um, and maybe it never will get better, but at least I know I worked on everything else, like my PTSD and my alcoholic tendencies. And I'm 100%, not 100% different than I used to be, but I've changed a lot about myself through all of the work that I've done, and it's worth it, 100%. I would never want to give back and go back to what I was doing, what I did.
I mean, given what you've said, I don't blame you either. I wouldn't want to. I would want to keep moving forward. I mean, there's been, what it sounds like, vast, vast change. I mean, and it sounds like you enjoy that change, and that's good.
Oh yeah, I I soak in it. I soak in that change. Like
You
when we're done
should.
with this conversation, I'm going to take 15 minutes or whatever it might be and just kind of like think about it, and about all the things I said and just kind of like soak in all of that happiness and a
Yeah.
lot of it's not all happiness, it's a lot of crap. And I'm like, that crap turns
Oh,
into happiness for me. And that's like,
true. True.
and that's what's so weird, is like I turned the injury, my Iraq injury around to something positive. I turned my rollover accident into something positive. I turned my alcoholism into something positive. So it's really weird to say, 8 years sober, that I turned all of those things that really affected my life that were negative on it all into positive things. And it wasn't easy to do, but it's there. And anybody can do it, you
Oh
know,
yeah. It's just how you look at it. I mean, that has a
right,
lot to do with it.
right. It's retraining your mind, your soul, your heart into those things aren't who I am, but they made me who I am. And it's okay to go back to those moments and be like, think about the bad things that happened and just flip flop them and be like, that's not who I am today. Um, and know that I keep my side of the street clean most of the time, and I don't have to have a whole lot of regrets when I go to bed at night. And the things that I do, people that are normal drinkers can use this as well. It's like meditate about your day, find out the part that made you upset or angry, if you were angry or whatever that day, and 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 do something about it. Um, if you don't know the person that you cut off because you're pissed off, or the person you flipped the bird to, like just meditate about it and be like, man, I hope that person has a better day tomorrow, and you know whatever you can to try to relieve that moment off of you so you don't have to have that squirrel running around in your head when you're laying down to go to bed. That's why a lot of people can't sleep, because they have that stupid squirrel in their head about something stupid that they did to somebody. It's like it's okay to forgive yourself for those moments and move on and let yourself, you know, breathe and relax and go to sleep. I think the biggest thing I can say out of all of this is like, it's okay to sit alone and take some deep breaths and ask yourself, why do I feel this way?
Hmm.
and understand that feeling. Like I said, it doesn't matter what feeling it is either, but just take that moment to understand why you're in that feeling or that emotion.
And I agree with that 100%. I mean, doing that right there will make probably a world of difference for a lot of people.
Oh yeah, for most, I almost guarantee it'll work.
Right,
I almost guarantee it. So, um,
right. I know you touched on a couple of them, but as far as like the coping mechanisms that you used that had seemed to help you through all this, you
mhm.
mentioned
Trying to get that
the
light in here.
letters, um, putting, trying to put yourself in other people's shoes, and the meditating. Or was there any one thing that had seemed to help you better than the other?
Um, I would say no. I would say each one of the things that I've learned that I have in my toolbox, they they come and they go as the situations come. I guess. Um, that's why I think it's important to like keep your toolbox as nice and clean as possible. So it's like, yeah, the put myself in somebody else's shoes works a lot for me. Um, uh, I do like that one a lot because it seems to keep me um, in the right mindset most of the time. But the meditation always helps too because it's always there. If I don't do it, then the scroll on the running wheel in my head kind of starts up again. So it's like a mixture of all of those things I have to use. I wouldn't say on a daily basis, but if I don't do it like on a weekly basis, I do seem to start um, my emotions start to go a little bit haywire. I do get more angry at the girls for stuff if I'm not keeping my side of the street clean or I'm not meditating or if I'm not putting myself into their shoes. My emotions seem to amplify. And so I have to keep those tools like um, well maintained, I guess is the correct way
Right,
to kind of think about it. Um, as you're trying to work on yourself, you're gonna find more tools and new tools that work for you, and you're gonna start putting them in your own toolbox, basically. Okay, this is what works for me the most in this situation. If I don't do this, then this happens, so I need to try and keep that going. But you'll just kind of start slowly building up these different tools in your repertoire that work for you. And when you start getting angry about stuff or whatever emotions might be happening, you need to be able to stop and realize like what's going on. So that's where the meditation comes in. So I think that like the first thing that you need to do is learn how to meditate and talk to yourself, um, and kind of go from there. I think that's probably that's like the very first one that matters is learning to be comfortable just sitting there and breathing and asking yourself a question and allowing that question to come through, um, which sometimes it might not come through right away. So you might have to meditate on it for a long period of time or a couple of times. Um, but just keep coming back to that. Always going back to meditating and trying to figure out why you're feeling the way you're feeling. Um,
right.
it's probably the most important tool I could say that is needed to come to go from to help change your mindset and who you are, kind of basically.
You know, it sounds like the coping skills you're using and the other things you're doing as far as your toolbox, keeping your side of the street clean, things like that. It's also helping you to keep that back as that stepping stone for the future to be able to keep moving forward with it.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. 100%. I'd say like that's my life now is like I'm always using my tools and they're always making the next step possible for me, you know. Since I've been sober, I've never once went, well, shoot, I'm not going to have a job. It's like, no, I have the confidence and the capabilities to get a job anywhere at almost any time. Um, but the meditation brings me back to like, what do you want to do, and how are you going to do it? You know, so I guess a good example of that is like me becoming a school bus driver at the age of 40. Um, you know, one day I was picking up my daughter from school and I saw the sign that has been sitting there since before school started.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you know, I got hired on in September, so that sign had been sitting there for, 3 or 4 months. Driving by that sign saying "Become a school bus driver," and one day I saw the sign, and for some reason, when I read it, I'm like, "Why haven't I done that?" Like, I really enjoy kids because they make me smile. I know how to be patient
Yeah.
with them. I'm like, why was this never? Why did that never come up? And now that I've become a school bus driver, I'm like, I really enjoy it, but I didn't let the sign, I didn't see the sign until I saw the sign. It's like really weird. Um, but then I came home and I meditated about it and I'm like, yeah, that's the direction we're going. I'm like, it fits into my schedule because I own a bowling pro shop. So I can go to work in the mornings, I can go to do my bowling pro shop in the middle of the day, and then I can go back to being, I can go drive my second route at the end of in the evening, and then I can go back to the bowling alley if need to. Um, and I was like, okay, that's the answer. So I'm like, okay, so now I own a bowling pro shop. I'm a school bus driver. I help at the bowling alley, and I have TikTok or my social media basically, where I try to spread strength and hope through my story. Um, and those are all things that I've always wanted to do. Um, so it's like it's just really funny that it took me 4 months driving by the same sign that's been up there since my daughter started school 2 years ago to all of a sudden it's like, okay, I need a job. What am I going to do?
Mm-hmm.
And like a month later, I see the sign and here I am, and things are going well, and I'm rebuilding from my divorce. But now that I've got this good job and I'm happy most days just because of what I'm doing, then things are good. I haven't been on TikTok for very long. I've been in the agency for like 50 days. And the things that I get to do through TikTok and all the friends that I have here um, make me smile, each day.
It's kind of that little network that I'm gonna call it a support system. I may be wrong for saying that, but to me, that's kind of what it seems like
Yeah,
because
100%. Like
it's
I have those connections now with some, I've been here for a short period of time, but um, I already have these people that mean a lot to me, just from being on TikTok.
right.
Um, and they help me on a daily basis on going, like I am allowed to have good friends that are willing to help me. And it's not always got to be on me to make other people feel good. And that's something that I kind of struggle with. It's like, no, I want to help you. You're not here to help me. I'm here to help you. And so I kind of
Right.
struggle with that. So being on TikTok really allows me um, that time to like allow people to help me, um, which I normally don't do. So it's like that uncomfortable. That's like one of the that's one of the uncomfortable things that I deal with is asking for help. And here, people help me on a consistent basis, and um, I'm learning to like let that be. and not be like, well, I have to do something for you. Like, I'm here to help other people, and you have to let me help you.
Yeah.
It's allowing them to help me, and I don't have to do anything, you know? So
Right.
I'm trying to get comfortable with that too.
I don't think that's just like a one person deal. I think naturally a lot of people hesitate bad about asking for help because a lot of times they see it as a sign of weakness or a sign of defeat, and they're afraid of being judged with it.
Yeah, 100%. And that's a lot. And a lot of people, yeah, a lot of people deal with the same thing for sure, like that. So, uh, when I first got sober, I had to ask for help. That was really hard. But now I'm starting to get uh, more comfortable in asking for help and letting people help me, and me not having to do something back in return every time, all the time, for every little thing.
So that brings me to my last question.
Okay.
Is there anything else that I maybe haven't asked that you feel would be beneficial for somebody?
It's okay to feel bad, but don't soak in the feeling bad part. Meditate about it, find out why you feel bad, and do something about it. Um, it's okay to feel good. If you're happy and you don't know why, take a second and meditate about it. Um, if life really has you down and you're not sure what to do about it, I would recommend filling out like a gratitude list. And it can be something as simple as the sun came up today, I woke up today. Um, a gratitude list really does help get you out of like a funk. Um, you know, I think that's something that I've used quite a bit, is just to be grateful for like the little things that we have. Um, I go and talk at the high schools for Veterans Week. So before Veterans Day, they do like Veterans Week. We go speak at schools and stuff. And at the middle schools and the high schools, I always try to talk to them about, be grateful for what you have here. Um, when I was in Iraq, we didn't have toilets and running water and all of those kinds of things. Like they 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 filled up buckets and threw it in the street. So be grateful for a wastewater, you know, waste tubing and plumbing. Like um, if you think you really have it bad, like think about people in third world countries that have it way worse.
I was gonna say it's like a lot of these things that we take for granted. I mean, we really don't naturally even honestly think about it. It's just there that you don't really realize until you see these places or until you're experiencing the stuff.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Who does those like commercials with like the starving children and stuff? It's like those places exist. Like that's real.
Hmm.
Like, and
Yeah, it's not
You
a
can be
joke.
grateful that you're not there. Like, um, there are homeless people and people that don't have enough food in America, and that's a real thing. And it's okay to say, well, I'm lucky that I'm not there right now, and be grateful for it. Um, and it's not always easy to see those little small things, but they're always there. And
Hmm.
if you're thinking you're having a bad day, somebody else is having a worse day.
All right.
So um, I think that kind of revolves back to the world doesn't revolve around me, and um, you don't have to. It's not always about me all the time, and that's something that I use a lot as well. Is I know that the universe doesn't revolve around me anymore, and I always try to put other people before myself, almost to the point that it's unhealthy.
Right.
um, so I will say, watch out for that too. Like when you find yourself always doing stuff for other people, and not saying it's a bad thing, but eventually you have to be careful and take care of yourself too.
Yes.
So,
And that is self care is one of those things that I think a lot of people forget about.
hmm yeah, I forget about it every once in a while myself still. So, um, but once again, that goes back to like the toolbox and the meditation. Like, okay, why do I feel like this? Oh, well, maybe because you haven't taken care of yourself for a week.
And that could be something as simple as taking a shower, going and sitting outside on a nice day, drinking a cup of coffee, or just sitting down and watching TV for a few minutes.
Right.
I mean, it doesn't have to be anything major.
I made into good things. So it's like other people should be able to use that and go, okay, if he did it, I can do it. And like I know that I know that's my story, and it's hard portraying exactly how hard it was, but at least people can hear that part of it and know, like, okay, this guy's gone through way more crap than I have.
Mhm.
um, why can't I do it? And hopefully give them some strength and some hope to just keep pushing forward to try to do what they need for themselves to keep getting better, and be able to be happy and look in the mirror again.
Yeah.
So,
Missy, I would like to ask you a few questions.
Okay.
First one is, would you mind telling us about one of the most challenging setbacks you have had?
My addiction to drugs. I was a meth addict for almost 11 years. Wow, that's still hard to admit, but yeah. Oh.
Well, look at kind of where you're at now from it. I mean, that's
Oh,
that's a good
from
thing.
now. Yeah, where I'm at now, I am beyond proud of myself for the milestones I've made.
That's awesome. That's very good. So, what kind of an impact did that have on you?
So, initially when I was doing the drugs, when I was doing meth, um I thought, oh man, like, look, I can be one of the 1% that can do drugs and live a normal life, and
Hmm.
I lost everything because of that mindset. And because I got clean from it, I've accomplished a lot because I know what it was like to have nothing.
Right.
Just thinking about the time when I had lost everything. I mean, when I moved to where I'm at now, me and my boyfriend literally had basically the clothes on our backs, a duffel bag, a tent, and our dog and car. And now we are proud owners of 3 vehicles. I'm actually talking to a real estate agent about buying my very first property. We made the first phone call today about buying property, actually.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's a spot that I always dreamed I'd be at, and since being a drug addict, I never thought I'd ever reach it because I thought drugs would always mean more to me.
So, I would like to ask you, I mean, would you say that you were able to build some resilience with this?
Oh yes, like initially at first, it is not easy. It is probably one I've been through a lot in my life, and saying I'm 5 years clean
Mhm.
is probably one of my proudest things because getting clean was probably the hardest thing that I had ever been through. The mental teardown of it, the depression, the anxiety, and finding those outlets was my saving grace. Finding outlets like my coloring books, my friends, talking to people that maybe didn't understand what addiction was like, but were open minded enough to listen to it and listen to my story. Like you,
I,
you were one of my outlets actually. When I was having my depression days, like certain people knew you were one of them, and you you guys helped push me to keep me better. And a lot of times you guys never even realized it, but I had you guys. You bond with people that are good for you.
right. And that's definitely a good thing to have with something like that.
Yes.
I mean, it definitely helps to have that support along the way.
The support is no matter pretty much any kind of, whether it's a mental battle you're going through or an addiction you're going through, or even just any kind of struggle. A support is almost a necessity.
Right. So I'd like to ask you what were a couple of key things that you did that helped you to cope with the things while you were experiencing this?
Couple of things. What were a couple of key things that I did?
Mhm.
Talk to people. I stayed a, I stayed away from the triggers. I stayed away from things that put me back in those negative mind habits. And I surrounded myself with positivity and good people. And wrote in a journal. The journal helped the mental part of the addiction, the depression, and because when I got
Just
clean, I ended up hating myself
right, just to
badly.
kind of help to kind of get those thoughts out and
Yes, writing in a journal that, and every time I filled my journal, I took it outside, put it in a fire, and burnt it. That
there you
way,
go.
myself, you know, nobody else could ever know what I thought, but I was able to say them.
That's definitely good to be able to kind of do that and use that to
Mhm.
cope. Were you able to find purpose while you were experiencing that setback, in that setback?
Like purpose, like in how, like my own personal purpose. Like I realized that I am more than just the drug. Like
Yes.
I was able to refine myself as my own person. I was able to refine my true happiness. I actually have reconnected with my children again. I have my children back in my life, and
That is very awesome. I am very happy to hear that.
going through the struggles has led me back to my family, and that makes my heart very happy.
That is, and I know I just said it, but that is very good to hear.
Yes, because life's very boring when you have nobody.
Very true. Very true. So, to this day, are you still affected by this?
I try to say no because that's just my stubbornness.
Right.
Um, in all honesty, yeah, I'm gonna be affected by my my addiction and by the effects of that and the depression the rest of my life. Um, some days it's a daily struggle, some days it's a weekly struggle, sometimes I don't deal with it maybe once a month. Those are the blessings.
Right. We
But
kind of take it where we can get it.
exactly, but my one thing I always do, and it really helps me. It helps my anxiety, it helps my depression, it helps. At one time I was not in a good mindset after I got clean. Is waking up every day and telling yourselves a couple positive notes for the day. Like today I'm going to help one random person today, or just give yourself, or even if it's just for yourself, like, hey, today, look, just smile a little extra today, or just give yourself a little hype up, and like remind yourself that today's a new day and you can make a new, better choice.
So pretty much practicing self-talk with it to kind of
Yeah.
help. So that kind of brings me into the next question that I want to ask is kind of what do you do today that helps keep it as a stepping stone for the future? And it sounds like you doing the self-talk is one thing that you do that helps with that.
Self-talking, forgiving myself for what has made me the most depressed or the most sad about my past. Like, maybe not forgiving it or not forgetting it. I'll never forget what happened or what I've done to myself or what I've been through that led me to those points.
Mhm.
But I have to forgive myself, because if you can't find forgiveness and just peace with it, it will be a whole new demon. Yeah, it's bad. Um,
I understand what you mean.
you have to find your own peace. Until you find that peace, it's still a battle that you will struggle very heavily. That's my biggest thing. I have to remember myself to find peace with myself because of my decisions.
With your experience, is there anything else that you would like to share that you feel would be beneficial for others that maybe I didn't ask?
Don't ever be scared to ask for help, because help is sometimes very much needed, and it is not a weakness. It is a strength to go ask for help.
I think that's kind of like a common deal where people see that asking for help kind of puts off that visual that it's a weakness and that brings that thought that you're going to be kind of, I don't want to say
My
look down on, but be looked down on. Does that make sense?
my biggest thing was, initially, I never wanted to ask for help because, exactly, I didn't want to be judged. I didn't want to be pitied. I didn't want to be looked down upon
Mhm.
because I had failed in my life at one time. But then I thought about it, it's like, no, asking for help is showing that I'm getting better, is showing the strength that I am taking that step after step to raise my head back above water. Asking for help is a sign of true strength and not utter weakness. It really is.
I couldn't have really said that any better myself. Let's talk about shifting the mindset, the power of perspective. What is the importance of mindset? Now, our mindset heavily influences how we deal with setbacks. A growth mindset is a belief that abilities can be developed through effort. In contrast, a fixed mindset leads us to see setbacks as permanent failures. For example, a survey by MindsetWorks revealed that students with a growth mindset were 34% more likely to persist through challenges, transforming those negative thoughts. Well, to embrace a growth mindset, we need to challenge negative thoughts. Instead of saying, I'll never be able to do this, rephrase it to, what can I learn from this? This simple shift can lead to a stronger motivation to improve. Let's talk about embracing challenges. Approaching challenges as opportunities for growth allows us to tackle setbacks positively. Rather than letting fear of failure stop us, we can face obstacles with curiosity. Research shows that individuals who cultivate curiosity are 20% more likely to find innovative solutions during tough times. Building resilience through setbacks. We ask, what is resilience? Resilience is our ability to adapt and recover from adversity. It's a skill we can develop over time. According to a study by the American Psychological Association, resilient individuals are better equipped to handle stress, with most of them reporting improved emotional well-being. Establishing healthy coping mechanisms is essential. Some effective strategies include mindfulness practices, like techniques. Establishing healthy coping mechanisms is essential. Some effective strategies include mindfulness practices. Techniques like meditation can decrease your stress levels, helping focus during challenging times. Journaling, writing about our experiences, has been shown to reduce feelings of anxiety and offer clarity. Seeking support, connecting with friends or professional counselors can provide encouragement and valuable perspectives. Setting realistic goals. After a setback, reassessing your goals can be beneficial. Setting small, achievable, short-term goals helps restore a sense of control. Every small victory builds our resilience and leads us closer to larger objectives. Let's talk about the role of self-compassion. Understanding self-compassion involves treating ourselves kindly during tough times. Instead of harsh self-criticism, those practicing self-compassion understand that setbacks are a part of being human. Research shows that self-compassion can increase your emotional resilience. Practice self-kindness. In moments of distress, consider how you would support a friend in a similar situation. You would likely offer them understanding and encouragement. Extending this compassion to others can significantly improve our emotional resilience. Cultivate mindfulness. Mindfulness allows us to acknowledge our feelings without judgment. This awareness creates space for healing and growth. Regular mindfulness practice has been shown to improve focus and resilience, allowing us to assess our setbacks more objectively. Find purpose in the setbacks. Identify the core values. Setbacks can prompt us to reflect on our core values. This reflection often clarifies what matters most to us, igniting our passion for overcoming challenges. For example, someone who values family may find new motivation to recover from a career or setback to provide better support for loved ones. Align the goals with values. Once we clarify our core values, aligning our goals with them becomes easier. This alignment not only helps us navigate the setbacks, but also leads to more fulfilling pursuits. A study found that individuals aligned their values were 35% more likely to succeed in achieving their goals. Create a vision board. A vision board illustrating our goals and values can be an inspiring tool. Building a board. A vision board illustrating our goals and values can be an inspiring tool. Building a board with images and quotes that motivate us serves as a daily reminder of our aspirations and solidifies our commitment to overcoming challenges. In life, setbacks are not failures, they are opportunities for personal growth. By shifting our mindset, building resilience, practicing self-compassion, and finding purpose, we can turn our setbacks into stepping stones towards success. As we navigate the complexities of life, remember that every setback carries the potential to elevate us. Embrace your journey and believe in your ability to persevere, grow, and thrive.